By now, most of you must have seen or read a statement that is making the rounds in the social media coming from a few individuals who suppose that matters relating to the salvation of Ambazonia should be settled under their exclusive direction. The statement calls for a conference of all Ambazonians and adds that the conveners, the Big Four as they would love to be called, are responsible for convening it. However, members of the Big Four or Big Five seem to have grown by one per the number of signatures on the statement in question. The Big Four have arrogated to themselves the title of conveners instead of allowing all or most of Ambazonian leaders to do the convening. State that they are kickstarting the conference with a tour of some Ambazonian communities in the diaspora. The tour is meant to peddle Ambazonians to buying the idea of the conference. The conveners of this conference also say they want to build unity and collaboration among Ambazonian groups and chart the way forward for Ambazonia in the event of any negotiations. The Canadian process is very much at the center of this conference that is being called by a few. The idea of this conference, ladies and gentlemen, isn't a bad thing at all. It has been long awaited, especially when it is intended to explore issues relating to unity, collaboration, and negotiations. All along from day number one of becoming the leader of the interim government, I have preached and championed this idea of unity and collaboration among the leadership and stakeholders in this fight for independence. And I will continue to do so in spite of all the odds. A meeting of this nature, a conference of this nature, that should bring everybody, everyone, or say the major groups together, cannot be a bad idea. It is the right thing to do, and again, Ambazonians have long been waiting for it. However, the bad thing about this Big Four conference is how they seem resolved to go about it. Anything that has to do with the collective interests of Ambazonia cannot be seen to want to be owned by an individual or a handful of them. Foundation to the end has to be about collective bargaining and collective interests. The date for this conference has been announced and changed several times. First, the venue was going to be Canada. Then, a few weeks later, we learned that it has been moved to Ghana. The month as initially announced was April, but according to the latest statement, the conference has been moved for some time in July. Who is making these decisions? If they want anybody to believe that the conference is being planned by Ambazonian leaders, who is making the decisions? Again, don't get me wrong. The importance and urgency of this conference cannot be overemphasized. However, the way the Big Four or Five are trying desperately to run away with and to own it constitutes a major problem. A major problem. You will think that the conveners of this conference, considering the effort and consultations that this interim government has made in efforts to bring everybody together, have consulted with the IG, the interim government. No, they did not. They have not. And they are already busy creating some committees in which they hope to invite others to join. That is the wrong way to go. It is not correct. The way to go, therefore, is to get all the leaders, and I mean all the leaders of the different groups and stakeholders on the table, sit around the table. They discuss the when and the how of the conference, and then, if need be, put up the different committees needed. All the leaders should be disposed to shaping the nature and the content of these pre-tours. 2. The pre-tours agenda should not be left in the hands of a few people to decide. All the leaders, and I mean all the leaders or most of them, should know the content or the message of those pre-tours, so that nobody is embarrassed with the questions they have to answer after. Then, if we don't do that, we would all have become accomplices. When the Canadians indicated their intention to take up the negotiation process, I personally reached out to some of the leaders and those leaders who had sat in those meetings with Cameroon in Canada. I didn't only indicate the intention of the interim government to endorse the Canadian process. I passed over to them suggestions or proposals that we had deliberated upon here at the interim government's cabinet. The suggestions sounded so good in their ears that they said they did run with it. The interim government suggested that we convene an emergency meeting of all the group leaders and stakeholders, deliberate on the Canadian process first. That is the way to approach it. Then, from there, we agree on a date for a physical meeting of all the leaders, a meeting in which we should be able to decide our agenda and strategy engaging in the Canadian process. The emphasis here was against any idea of having to go to sit in the Canadian process as groups. Bad idea. The idea was that we call for a meeting or a conference of all the leaders. They all come together and we formulate our agenda and manner of approach to the process, the negotiation process. No one group should be allowed to go sit in there on behalf of Ambazonia, was the point. The group thing should be forbidden. The groups, once in a meeting or conference, will then have to figure out the process of choosing the experts who represent Ambazonia during the negotiations. The catch is to prevent groups or individual leaders from being easily infiltrated or bought over by the enemy. We all know how La République du Cameroun operates. They may easily buy some of these leaders with chicken change, to the effect that they begin working as proxies for La République du Cameroun during that negotiation process. We don't want that to happen. If we all come together and pick our experts who sit there representing none of the groups but Ambazonia, experts who then cannot enter into any direct deal without consulting with Ambazonian leaders, everything you can imagine, everything would run smoothly void of rancor and any suspicions. Where the conference that is being pitched at this moment is going wrong is in the idea of a few people, a few individuals, actually people with very questionable resumes throughout the 6 years of this war, appearing to want to own and run away with the process, instead of consulting with all leadership, getting everybody to sit around the table to discuss and agree on the direction. They seem to be unilaterally deciding the modus operandi of the conference. For example, they already have picked the date and picked the venue without adequate consultation with the leaders. They just want some leaders to come on board just so they can serve for the statistics, I guess. Their statement states that other groups will be invited along the way. And we say, hell no, that is not correct. It is wrong. All groups are supposed to be convened, not invited along the way. The agenda isn't and shouldn't be some group's agenda. It should be Ambazonia's own agenda. And if the conveners mean well, a meeting of all the groups should be the priority now. And I mean now, that is, before any conference. When people feel a sense of entitlement to a process or a cause, and you invite them to some conference that is supposed to have collective ownership, you are simply inviting them to come there as observers, as spectators, and not as stakeholders with a sense of entitlement. This is what is wrong with the Canada or Ghana conference, Canadian or Ghana conference they are calling now. This egomaniac attitude of me, and my group first is what caused the divisiveness in our liberation movement and diverted the attention of some of our comrades from the liberation of Ambazonia to the liberation of some leaders and their groups. The time has come for us to fix these wrongs. Again, the moment has come for these wrongs to be fixed. I have no doubt in my mind that this conference is being hastily announced, and dates and venues are being changed constantly, only because they learn of the interim government's readiness to spearhead an all-inclusive conference in Washington, D.C. in May. But that is not the problem. If they do things the right way, transparently and selflessly, the interim government and the unity platform have absolutely, I believe, no problem combining the two conferences to make one. We are one people. We should have one conference, and that is the spirit. This is what the interim government has proposed. These proposals were sent to every legitimate leader in this fight or struggle for Ambazonian independence, including some stakeholders. After this presentation, I shall be asking the Department of Communication to make available to the public the proposal that the interim government sent out, I think 3 weeks or so ago. But here is what the interim government proposed in the summary. All the groups come together, each group maintaining its independence. We form a leadership council. The leadership council be made up of representatives from all the groups, including group leaders. The leadership council then sits down and figures out areas the groups can collaborate in. We suggested, for example, the area of communication, humanitarian, that has to do with refugees, diplomacy, including negotiations, defense, and the security of Ground Zero, among others. Again, I will send the statement out, the proposal out. For leadership of the council, the groups we propose take turns and lead for either 6 months or 1 year at the maximum. The leader does not execute his group agenda, nor his own agenda. He is there to execute only the program that the council would have approved. If leadership rotates, no one group, no matter how large or small, can be seen to be domineering other groups. For funding, we propose that the council restricts itself to special projects. They can either be funded through joint fundraisers or each group chipping in its own due for the project. As for negotiations or diplomacy, we propose that the council should be in the place to research expert negotiators who should represent Ambazonia in any future talks, Canada or no Canada, any talks. The expert negotiators report to the council and are responsible to it and not to any one group. Again, for the first time, we will have that proposal published for the record. This document we wrote from the interim government is out there in the hands of all the leaders, all the legitimate leaders. They have all commended the fairness of it, at least for those who have cared to respond to it. They all agree that it is the right approach. The Unity platform is refining it right now, and it has actually voted for an all-Amber conference for May the 25th through the 27th in Washington, D.C. They shall be coming up here on this channel to talk about that a little bit. But do not be mistaken, ladies and gentlemen. Do not be mistaken. If others agree, we can combine this. I like to state it emphatically once more, as I have done in the past, that no one group is going to negotiate Ambazonia's independence. None. Dig it off your psyche. In fact, any group thinking that it alone can do so has another agenda. And I do not believe that agenda is an independence agenda. If people have nothing to hide, if leaders don't want to cut corners and make reprehensible deals with the enemy, then common sense dictates that many heads reason better than one. I call upon every one of you, every Ambazonian out there, push for a conference that is all-inclusive. A conference where all groups draw and own the agenda. A conference that sets a genuine unity and collaboration strategy. A conference that sets Ambazonia's agenda up high from individuals' agenda, especially when it concerns negotiations leading to independence. A true Ambazonia conference, we will not engage, and when I say we, I mean we here at the interim government will not engage in any collective conference in which resolutions are tele-guided through the back door. We will not. Mark us absent. Ambazonians, this is your fight. We'll call it struggle. If you allow selfish people and egomaniacs to own the process and to run with it, we may just well be heading in the direction that Muna and Foncha left us. If a person would travel all the way from another country to another country all by himself to mortgage our resources, does your conscience convict you that such a person should not be allowed to teleguide the negotiation process for your freedom? I guess your answer is as good as mine.